Hi all, SJ here with another of my Saturday relationship chats. And I've had a strangely hectic week, missed videos all over the place, and just seem to have not been very organised this week. So I'm doing this video a bit off the cuff. I've made no notes, so I have a rough idea that I want to talk about fearful avoidance in relationships, as I spoke a lot about the anxious and avoidant relationships last week, the avoidant and anxious dynamic. But I suspect without notes I may get a bit distracted. So, in fact, actually, I may do a bit of an overview of all the relationships if I feel I've got time. I'm not entirely sure how much I'll end up talking about this. You know what I'm like with my waffling on. So, fearful avoidants are this weird mix of both anxious and avoidant attachment styles. It's often brought on by deep trauma and is, as I've said previously, one of the rarest attachment styles, with less than 10% of the population having this attachment style. In fact, I think it's about 7 or 8% of the population is fearful avoidant, or FA, what we often refer to it as. And these are people who deeply crave intimacy and emotional connection, but are also terrified of it and run from it, making them seem quite unstable to friends and romantic partners. These are individuals who want a relationship, who deeply want a relationship, but are unconsciously fearful of it at the same time. And because of this, you're left with a person who is constantly at war with themselves and their partners, preventing any relationship from being safe or stable or well connected. So their relationships are typically very dramatic and highly unpredictable, and actually often full of conflict. So when it comes to relationships, there isn't really a good match for a fearful avoidant. They obviously will benefit immensely from someone with a secure attachment style, as these are often, a secure attachment style is often quite non-reactive, and they're often stable individuals. So although these relationships can work, it's going to be hard work for the secure partner, as although their stability can have a grounding effect on the fearful avoidant, at the same time, the fearful avoidant will need to do some work on healing themselves to avoid wearing down the securely attached partner. They are patient. Securely attached partners will typically be quite patient, but a fearful avoidant will test anyone's patience. Another okay match, potentially, would be the fearful avoidant with an anxious, preoccupied partner. Now, it's really important that I'm really clear on this. This match can work well for a fearful avoidant, but typically for an anxious partner, it is not going to be a good match. The fearful avoidance behaviour patterns and erratic give and take in relationships will be a major trigger for many anxious partners and will drastically increase an anxious partner's inner wounds. That said, if you have a fearful avoidant who is working on themselves and are aware of their behaviour, and an anxious partner who is understanding of what their partner's needs and reactions may entail, then this relationship can develop into a good one. Any relationship can. If both parties are willing to work on it, almost any relationship can develop into a good one. But unless that work and understanding is there, I'm afraid the most likely outcome is a very highly dysregulated, anxious partner and a very avoidant and unpredictable, fearful avoidant partner. It simply won't work. They will break each other. Now, when it comes to a fearful avoidant partner and a dismissive avoidant partner, these are typically relationships that won't work, in my experience at least. Whilst initially there is the same draw, or a draw that is very similar to that of the anxious and avoidant partnership, with a fearful avoidant, the atmosphere will quickly become frosty. And usually the dismissive avoidant partner will tire of the drama and conflict that the fearful avoidant brings to the partnership. The only real way this dynamic will work is if both partners are working on their own inner healing, as typically avoidance will struggle but be intrigued and drawn to an anxious partner. But a fearful avoidant partner brings a whole new level to the life of an avoidant partner. And unfortunately, it's one an avoidant typically can't and won't tolerate. So they don't tend to last. Now, a fearful avoidant with a fearful avoidant will be very similar to the dismissive avoidant combination, but may last a little bit longer, maybe. It's very rare to have this combination, to be honest, simply because the fearful avoidant attachment style is so uncommon. You've got 7 or 8% of the population. It's unlikely that they will be drawn to each other. And also, as with everything, it really depends on the individuals, really, and what their triggers and reactions are. But typically, when you've got two fearful avoidants together, the conflict between them can be explosive, and they'll often make each other worse rather than better. That said, if they're both aware they're fearful avoidants, they are more likely to do well, as they'll both be aware of each other's issues. There's this weird belief that if you have two attachment styles that are the same, they'll work really well together. And sadly, this frequently isn't the case. It seems like logically that would work, but it just doesn't most of the time. In fact, it usually is only the case that it will work when you've got a secure attachment style partnered with a secure attachment style. And I know this all seems rather bleak, and I know if you're a fearful avoidant watching this, you're probably feeling a bit meh right now, but please don't. Please don't. That's not the purpose or aim of today's chat. You can have a decent, loving, long-lasting relationship. Absolutely you can, but you'll need to do some inner work on yourself, and you'll need a partner who is understanding of your needs, and likewise, you'll need to be understanding of their needs too. It's a give and take in a partnership. It is not just a take, take, take. So, seeing as we're talking about partnerships, I guess we could do a bit of a run through of the various attachment styles. I'm trying not to sneeze, I'm sorry. Of the various attachment styles pairings. So let's start with secure, maybe? Yeah, let's start with secure. So where we have a secure attachment style, these typically work well, where we have a secure attachment style partnered with a secure attachment style. These will work well. Yes, they're going to have their issues and their disagreements and their conflicts in their partnership. Everyone does. It is not normal to not have disagreements and conflicts in any partnership. But the benefit of both being secure is that communication comes easier to you both. And because, secure attachers have a good level of self-belief and security within themselves, they also tend to have a greater empathy for each other's feelings. They know they're able to be independent in a healthy way, but also know that interdependence is equally as rewarding for both partners. Where we have a secure attachment style with an anxious partner, this can be a bit of a minefield. An anxious attacher requires a lot of reassurance in their relationships with people generally. Actually, they require a lot of reassurance in all their relationships, and this will really test a secure attacher's patience. It will test any attachment styles patience, to be fair, but for a secure attacher, it can really test their patience and can even move them towards an avoidance style in their communication, especially if your anxious partner is demanding lots of messages, constant communication, and that is usually the case with an anxious partner. That is kind of part and parcel of being anxious. You want a lot of messages, you want constant contact. Despite being more grounded and stable, despite having a good level of security within themselves, this anxious partner can test anyone's patience, even a secure partner. Now, for some secure partners, this level of reassurance may not be a problem. I know it's not for me. I will happily reassure anyone as much as they need it to. It doesn't bother me in the slightest. In this case, the grounding effect of having a secure and patient partner who offers reassurance can actually move an anxious partner into a more secure bracket. It's important to note, though, that in a crisis, an anxious partner will often go backwards or revert to their anxious style. However, if the relationship does well, then in time even that will ease off. For most anxious attachment styles, it's about feeling safe and secure and reassured. Then we have a dismissive avoidant partner with a secure attacher. It's not usually a great mix, to be honest. For a secure attachment style, communication, emotional connection, and affection come hand in hand with healthy independence and interdependence. For a dismissive avoidant, these are things, well, they're things they avoid. Unconsciously, maybe, but they do. And for a secure partner, this avoidance can actually drive them towards an anxious attachment style. So it can be quite damaging. I've mentioned before, I've always had anxious undertones. But actually, in most of my relationships, I felt quite secure as there was open communication, emotional connection, and lots of physical and mental affection, and a good level of interdependence and future planning. My last relationship was with an avoidant. The first one I've ever dated, and probably going to be the last one because I don't think I'd date another one. And it pushed me so far into the anxious attachment style. It's taken a lot of work to bring myself back out of it and back to the secure bracket. A lot of self-healing. Now, if a dismissive avoidant recognizes the problem and makes the effort to communicate more, to be more affectionate and have a healthy level of interdependence, to communicate more, then this can gradually reorient an avoidant partner towards a more secure relationship style. Unfortunately for many, when that doesn't happen, it's likely that the secure partner will give up on the relationship and move on because they're secure enough in their own sense of self-worth that they know there'll be someone better out there somewhere, and they're not afraid to give up on a bad relationship. That's why these avoidant and secure relationships frequently don't work. I've already mentioned about the fearful avoidant with a secure partner, but it's very similar to that of the avoidant with a secure partner, except because a fearful avoidant often has low self-esteem and a sense of low value in themselves, it's more likely that it'll be the fearful avoidant partner who will end the relationship as they're fearful of getting too close to their partners. So they flaw find, which makes it a less painful choice for the fearful avoidant. Get out before I'm chucked out kind of thinking. So then I think I've done them all. Yep. So then we move into the anxious attachment style partnerships. And where we have an anxious partner with an anxious partner, it's not going to be a match made in heaven typically. It's really rare that these relationships will work. I mean, obviously anything can work, but it's rare. Neither party will be good at anticipating the needs of the other, despite their attachment style being that of one that needs a lot of reassurance. They just don't typically seem to be very good at reassuring each other. It's quite a self-centered attachment style and almost selfish. They want the reassurance, but maybe they're not so good at giving reassurance. So they typically won't work. They won't be able to reassure each other in the way that they are needing. We have the avoidant attachment style with an anxious, preoccupied partner, and I'm in dismissive avoidance. I spoke in great detail about this last week as it's one of the most common long-lasting relationship types and second only to secure, unsecure relationships. So it's a dysfunctional pairing, but one that, as I said last week, can work. You've got two polar opposites here, and this can cause a lot of stress and anxiety for both partners. I was thinking about this a bit during the week, actually. That's my dog trying to get into the room. I was thinking about this a bit during the week, actually, as someone asked me why, if neither fulfills the other's needs, do a dismissive avoidant and an anxious preoccupied partner stick together for so long typically. And honestly, I believe it's because the avoidant partner actually kind of likes the control of giving out just enough to keep an anxious partner hooked but off kilter. So I frequently like to think of other people as being clingy or too needy, as it removes any level of responsibility from themselves. So the avoidant settles in for the long haul, breadcrumbing their anxious partner just enough to keep them in place. And for the anxious partner's part, they stick with it because they have a fear of being unwanted. They are worried that they feel they are unlovable, and they're afraid of being alone. So, partly, I mean, anxious and dismissive avoidance can be a good relationship. It is one of the longest lasting types of relationships out there. But typically, I wonder if, certainly in the beginning of these relationships, whether it isn't a case of that ego boosting for the avoidant and that fear of being alone for the anxious. Um, Anyway, so then we have the fearful avoidant with an anxious partner. Again, I've already covered this really, but usually these relationships are fraught with drama, a bit like the avoidant and anxious mix, but far, far less stable. Where have I got to? Okay, then we move into the dismissive avoidance. Now, I spoke about the fearful avoidant with a dismissive avoidant partnership already, and these are quite unusual pairings as neither are good with emotional connection and intimacy. So, whilst it seems logical that these two would get on okay as they're both avoidant, and so would prefer a partner who likes an unhealthy level of independence in a relationship, a fearful avoidant actually desires that connection, even though they're fearful of it. And likewise, a dismissive avoidant won't get the level of attention they crave to boost their ego as they would from a secure or anxious partner. And when it comes to an avoidant with an avoidant partnership, that's even more rare a combination. In fact, these types are rarely drawn to each other to even get started in the first place, as the avoidant, can't be bothered nature of avoidance tends to mean that these relationships don't last long at all, if they even get started. These are two personality types that are often, often don't really connect. And I know I've spoken quite negatively about all of this today, and my aim is not to make you feel bleak or like there's no hope for yourselves or your partners. That's not the case here at all. What I think the real takeaway from this video should be is that it's important to understand your partners. It's important to know what their attachment style is so you can better support their needs as well as your own. So, a lot of the time, these things turn to dust not because you're fundamentally broken, but because you don't understand each other or even maybe yourself. I had heard of attachment styles, I knew of them, but until relatively recently, I hadn't really paid much attention to them and didn't know that I was an anxious, preoccupied attachment style. Once I discovered that, I understood a lot more about the behaviours I was displaying that I felt I had very little control over. And I knew what I was doing wasn't healthy and was damaging not only myself, but my partner at the time, but I couldn't seem to stop it and I couldn't figure out why I was like that. I'd never displayed these behaviours before, really, so it was frustrating and confusing at the same time. And once I actually looked into it, suddenly everything made so much more sense. And once I knew what the problem was, I could work to fix it. After all, we can't fix something if we don't know that it's a problem in the first place. So I think no matter where you are in your life right now, it's really worth discovering your attachment style for your own well-being. And if you're going online and looking for one to try, I really recommend the one on the Personal Development School. I'll put a link to it in the description of this video. And it's the best one I've found so far, for sure. If nothing else, it'll give you some insight into yourself, even if you don't feel like you're ready to work on any issues you may have going forward. Anyway, I have spoken for a very long time again. And it's Saturday, which means I'm off out with my friendship group tonight. So shortly I will be needing to get ready, which will probably involve my 9-year-old daughter Lilybell helping me to get dressed. So that will be a fun adventure for today. So take care of yourselves, everyone. And as per normal, any questions or comments, my inbox is open, or leave them in the comments and I'll get back to you as soon as I see it. Much love to you all. Take care of yourselves. Have a great weekend, whatever you're doing. Take care. Bye. Bye.